What's up, everyone? Back for another beer review, and today is another installment of Macro Monday here on the channel, where I review a beer from a macro brewery or a macro-esque beer from a craft brewery. And the beer I'm reviewing today comes from the Little Kings Brewing Company, and they're out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and this is their Little Kings Cream Ale. So this is a cream ale that comes in at 6% alcohol by volume, 20 IBUs at the time of review. And this bottle is just over 3 months old. So if you follow the channel, you know that when it comes to cheaper, low ABV crushers, my favorite is Genesee Cream Ale, aka Genny Cream Ale. I got the hat, got the shirt, got the glass today. And I love trying out new beers to me that are regional classics across the US, and this definitely classifies as a regional classic in and around the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Now, they do have a little bit of a spiel here on their website that I'll read real quick. It says, Little Kings was originally brewed by the Shaneling Brewery in Cincinnati, Ohio. Legend has it that the sweet cream ale in the iconic small bottle was created when the draft beer cooler went on the fritz at Cincinnati's famous Montgomery Inn. It says refrigeration was a finicky thing in those days. The regular patrons loved Shaneling Cream Ale as a sidecar chaser for their bourbon Boilermakers, but didn't want to buy full-sized bottles. Necessity led to the invention, and the king was born. The delicious cream ale with subtle sweetness was an instant hit, and the 7-ounce bottle became the perfect sidecar chaser. So yes, this is a 7 fluid ounce bottle. The unfortunate thing is they are in green bottles, which if you drink Heineken or say Rolling Rock or a beer like that, you know that a light is not its friend. It can become skunky. I want to do a blind side-by-side with this and Genny Cream Ale. However, if this is skunky, any of the bottles, then it's going to defeat the purpose because I'll be able to know right off the get-go from the aroma. So we'll see. I also have a second bottle because we're going to drink more than 7 ounces of this, or at least pour more than 7 ounces into the glass. Now, I also believe the brewery that actually, oh yeah, it is skunky. So, god damn, that sucks. Anyway, let's pour it in the glass. The brewery that supposedly brews this one is Hudie Pole in Cincinnati. I don't know too much about them, but they definitely are the ones that brew it based on what I see. I think they just call us Little Kings Cream Ale as far as just the brewing company to keep it whatever. But yeah, man, this is skunky. Real skunky. Like super duper skunky. Now, I picked this one up at Red Wine and Brew in Mentor, Ohio, and they had it in the cooler in the back, so it wasn't directly in the light. And I tried to get the one that was not the furthest one, to the front, and whatever. I guess you just gotta make do with what you got. So I probably won't do that side by side unless I pour them and let them sit out for a bit so the skunkiness subsides. So what does that look like? To me, that looks like your typical macro beer of some sort. This is a cream ale, not a lager. It's 6%, so it's a little bit bigger than Genny, but like a 1.5 ABV points there. But yeah, so that has that pure golden straw color. It had about a finger of a bright white, somewhat soap sudsy looking head that is now dissipated to a thin film. Good carbonation. This has the etching that promotes the carbonation. Let's see if I can go with the lights too. It's already light stricken, who cares? But you can see the carbonation bubbles as you pour it down. But yeah, it looks exactly how you guys see it on camera is exactly how it looks for me as far as the beer goes in person. So anyway, clarity is also awesome. I don't think I even tried to show you guys my hand, but yeah, I mean you can tell the clarity is awesome, and you don't really need that. Anyway, yeah, it's skunky. It smells like a skunk sprayed. It smells like really bad marijuana, or maybe good marijuana. The thing about skunkiness for me that I've noticed is as my palate gets acclimated to it, it becomes less skunky, and then you just don't taste it or smell it anymore. That's what's happening here. I'm getting a very faint, generic, corny, grainy malt character. Maybe a little bit of a grassiness. No off aromas outside of that skunkiness, which is kind of expected at this point. Now, the cap, I think I have correctly. I just want to make sure. Doesn't matter. It smells kind of, after that skunkiness dissipates, it kind of smells like a Genny Cream Ale or a generic macro. Now, this is 6%. So I'm curious to see if I do actually notice alcohol in this, where a lot of the lower ABV cream ales you see here in the West New York area, because of Genny, so many craft breweries in the Rochester area, the Finger Lakes region, and even further west out to Buffalo, they'll do their own take on a cream ale. Most of the time, they'll just make a very generic cream ale, but they'll do, they'll make it themselves, whatever the ABV is and whatnot. However, if you see a lot of commercial cream ales from craft breweries, it's usually some adjunct-laden one, like a vanilla cream ale is very popular. So you don't see it's not a very popular style. But here in the Western New York area, Genny is one of those beers that is definitely a cult classic in the region. Anyway, it smells all right. Let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. First things first, when they say it's a sweet kind of cream ale, it is. It's sweeter than Genny. It's sweeter than a lot of cream ales. It's not cloying or anything, but it has more of that like grainy, slightly corny kind of malt character. Definitely a little bit sweeter. The body on this one is like higher side of light, lower side of medium, so 6%. Maybe a bit thin, but it's all right. Like I expect a lighter body on a beer like this, even though it's 6%, like just the taste and everything that this beer is supposed to be, like it's the body's fine. It's not bothering me. Like if this was a 6%, say IPA or Pale Ale or something, I'd be like, yeah, it's a little bit thin. The mouthfeel has a very effervescent, crisp kind of nature to it. It's relatively smooth on the finish going down. Pretty refreshing. I will say the difference I can tell off the rip between this and Genny is that it's definitely sweeter because of the higher ABV and the fact that they kind of tout this as a sweeter cream ale. You can tell. But Forefront, it's really just very akin to most cream ales. It has that sweeter, grainy, slightly corny kind of malt character that is present in most of the beers within the style. Passes through, maybe get a little bit of like a red apple, like a generic fruitiness, maybe even a touch of like a lemon. And finishes with a grassy, slightly floral hop character. This is actually almost firmly dry. So while it does lean sweet at the Forefront, it is dry on the finish. Very mild bitterness, not much bitterness to speak of. The ABV is the thing that I do feel a little bit, not on the palate. Like I'm not getting any kind of like ethanol or any kind of actual alcohol feeling on the palate. In my chest though, it's a little bit warming. And that's rare for me to say it's 6%, but it is. It definitely drinks a bit bigger from that aspect than say a Genny Cream Ale. But as I continue to drink this and probably drink the rest of it, because it's not off-putting whatsoever, it's not bad. Is it my favorite lower ABV crusher? And I can't even say it's a lower ABV crusher. It's 6%. Is it my favorite macro-esque kind of beer? No. Is it bad? It is not. Outside of that skunkiness, which didn't carry over the taste, and typically for me it doesn't, just the aromatics. And usually the aromatics subside as I continue to smell it, especially when I'm reviewing it in this format, a minute or two smelling it. My palate gets acclimated to it. It kind of falls off in the background. That's what's kind of happening here. I think the pros to this one is it's a 6% beer that outside of that little warming in the chest kind of drinks like a Genny Cream Ale, a sweeter version of a Genny Cream Ale. And I think Genny's, 4.5, something in that realm. So you're talking about 1.5%. Now, if you drink an entire 8-pack of this over the course of a night or a day or whatever on like the weekend, you're going to feel that. You're going to definitely 100% feel that in comparison to drinking, a 6-pack of Genny. And that's a good thing because bang for your buck is, nice. Now, do I like this better than Genny? I do not, but I'm a fanboy. Look at me. Like what? I like Genny, but that's why I would have liked to do the blind side-by-side. What I might do is still try that blind side-by-side. And if it turns out it doesn't work that well, and I know right from the get-go, then I'll just scrap the video. But if it does, maybe I'll post it, and we'll go from there. I have a whole setup to do blind reviews. I got like a turntable to spin the glasses around. I got blacked out wine glasses, so pouring a Little King's Cream Ale and a Genny into blacked out wine glasses. I'm sure that will go over well with everybody who calls craft beer lovers snobs. I'm not. I'm a craft beer enthusiast. I'm not a snob, or at least I try not to be. But yeah, that should be interesting when I do end up doing it that way, if I do. But anyway, back to Little Kings, because I feel I'm doing them a disservice talking about Genny so often and having to get up and whatnot. But it's an easy comparison because Cincinnati is not that far from the West New York region. It's like a 6-hour drive. And, it's a regional favorite just like Genny Cream Ale is. This is pretty solid. One more sip and I'll lock in a rating. Now, I will say one thing is that I gave Genesee, one of the first beers I reviewed on the channel, one of the first like 10, 15, 20 beers, I gave that a 3.25. After reviewing all the beers over the course of my channel, almost 2,500 beer reviews later, I would bump that score up a bit because I've started to appreciate the lower, ABV, cheaper beers of that nature. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but yeah, I'd probably give Genny now like a 3.75 to a 4 personal preference. I gave it a 3.25 the first time I reviewed it. And back then, I wasn't thinking like as a whole in a scope of what I like and whatnot. But the better macro lagers and the better macro-esque beers, like a Genny Cream Ale, some of my other favorites would be like Narragansett Lager, Miller High Life, things like that. Those are closer to a 4 for me. This is not, unfortunately, but it's not a terrible beer. The best rating I could give this based on everything that I've had, the skunkiness brings it down a bit, not to the fault of the beer itself, but the vessel it's in. I have to give this an appropriate score. I'm going to be generous to it, only because I like cream ales. No off flavors outside of the skunkiness. It's just a little bit of that warming sensation in my chest at 6% is just wild, because like I'm one of those dudes that drink a 10% Imperial Stout and be like, oh, it hides the alcohol extremely well. I don't know, maybe because my mind sees a beer like this and I can't even believe that I got a warming in my chest type of thing. But this is still nice. So I'm gonna give this a generous score. So be forewarned. I'm not gonna give it stylistically and whatnot, just overall. I'm gonna give Little King's Cream Ale a straight 3.5 out of 5. And the reason I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5 is because I like cream ales. I like Genny. Genny's better than this for myself personally. But I'm not going to sit here and say this is a bad beer, because it's not. What I will say, however, is they should definitely get rid of these green bottles. I love the green bottles from an aesthetic point of view. They look cool, whatnot. But if you get them in a beer store, or even a beer store that knows what they're doing, if they're just on the shelves for like a month or two, sitting in the bright lights that's in a beer store, they get skunky. Both of these bottles are skunky. I'd imagine the entire 8-pack is skunky. So yeah, 8-pack. We'll talk about that in a moment. So price point availability, $8.99 an 8-pack. Of 7 fluid ounce cans or bottles. So you get essentially 56 fluid ounces for $8.99. Fine by me. It's a bit more pricey than the Genny Cream Ale, but it's bigger in ABV. But that's a fine price point. So that's what I paid at Red Wine and Brew. Might be a little bit cheaper, more expensive wherever you can find these, which brings me to availability. They have a beer finder on their website, which I used, and Red Wine and Brew was one of those places that sold it, so I ended up picking it up. Outside of that, I don't know where they get distro outside, I'm sure, of Ohio. They don't get any distro into New York, and certainly not West New York, but I'm glad I reviewed this. I'm glad I had a chance to try it. I'm going to take one more sip just to make sure, 3.5 out of 5. Again, I'm being generous. Honestly, this is probably, let me go back one more sip. Yeah, it's just a sweeter cream ale, nice dryness. If I didn't get a little bit of that warming in the chest and the skunky character, I think a 3.5 is kind of what I'm basing this off of, those two things, right? But realistically, this is like a 3.25, 3.3, but I'm going to leave it at 3.5 because that's the first thing I said. So, it's just a rating. Ratings don't matter. Just let it be known this is a nice cream ale, but I would love to see, I don't know if they sell these in cans or they just keep them in the 7 fluid ounce bottles, but I know with the whole story, they want to keep them in the 7 fluid ounce bottles. For me, put this in like those 7.5 fluid ounce cans if people want to, for a Boilermaker, or put them in 12 fluid ounce cans. Get rid of that light-stricken, kind of feeling. These were twisties, I believe. Whatever. Just do that, and I think I would be happier. But who am I? Just a random dude in Western New York that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So if you've had this before, whether it was many years ago or recently, let me know what you think about it. Like I said, I would love to do a side-by-side with this and Genny Cream Ale. We'll see if I make that a reality. I do have 4 bottles left because I gave 2 of the bottles of the 8-pack to Anderson over at Ginger Yeti Road Beers, good friend of mine, fellow beer tuber. I think he reviewed it because he did post on Untappd, and I think he didn't hate it. He definitely gave it a lower score than I did. I might say he gave it like a 2.75 or a 3, which is fair. I'm going a little higher just because I feel a little generous today. I'm in the Genny gear. We love cream ales. Cream ales for the win. Anyway, I'm shutting this one down. That does it for another Macro Monday. I do these every 3 to 4 weeks. I do know the next Macro Monday I plan on reviewing is Bud Light. I bought a big can. It's good until I think June or July, so that'll be the next one that I review. I want to review Coors Light after that, so I do all the BMC light beers, and then after that, all bets are off. So I appreciate it. To the next one. Cheers.